I got it. Greetings, unsettled souls, and welcome to the Looney Bin. We are here with Mike Mostert of In Theory. Friends, welcome him to the Looney Bin.
I'd love to be in the Looney Bin.
It's the only way to be. Friends, if you're just tuning in, I know people are going to trickle into this probably after it's been recorded. Friends and listeners know that this is a very silly show. We do ask in-depth questions. If I seem a little off today, listeners, I just found out that a friend of mine passed away in August, and I've been looking her up as recently as yesterday. So if I seem a little off, unsettled souls, bear with me because it's nothing to do with In Theory, who is amazing. If you're listening and don't know, I have encouraged the label and the people who work within Theory and a few other bands to send me bands who I don't know for me to interview and to get to know. And it has been a wild, stompy ride within Theory. Mike, welcome aboard. How did I want to ask first off the rip? How do you get the collection of musicians you have together? Like all of us would dream of doing something like that.
Mm.
And tell us a little bit about who all you brought together.
Well, there's a lot of people on the record, but we also, Vinny Appice, Eric Wells, Glenn Sobel, Tommy Henriksen. I think we may have some special guests, even additional special guests. I'm trying to figure out how to release this. There's a single, that I also did with Rod Morgenstein and Victor Wooten. And then we also have like the original Swampers on it. But yeah, the thing is, I just have a lot of good friends. How's that? So, um,
It almost looked like, if you can imagine, listeners, if you are in your bedroom or if you are in your loony bin room, if you look on the posters on your wall and you were to pick out, man, I'd like to have him in a band. Man, I'd like to go him in a band. If you've ever made one of these Facebook group chats where it says, who would you like to put in a super group? It's almost like Mike Mostert here got to do just that. It was it
it's pretty
scheduling and
much,
everything. How did you do it?
yeah, it's pretty much that. I call it my, for lack of better words, like, my bucket list guys. And it's fortunately, like I said, I have friends and friends. I just essentially just call them up and then I'll send them the material, and they're like instant fans. Like, yeah, I want to do it, and that's really, it's not that simple, but it's that straightforward.
Yeah.
And I think because I would say credible friends are recommending these people that are on my bucket list. I think that helps the process too. So,
Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got started.
ooh, in this phase, there's a whole long journey. So,
I read your Wikipedia page and it's just a little bit bigger than War and Peace. It's very impressive. Very
so,
impressive.
but yeah, I have to look it up. I haven't. So, um, hopefully the information is correct on it. I've never looked it up. I've been encouraged to give more info, but I guess it just sort of populates, I guess, over time. But the longest story, I'm gonna try to shorten it up. But way back in the day, um, I was in a band called Big Mouth, which was signed to EMI, and it's with the same singer who's in Theory. And in that band, we had Steve Riley from LA Guns, and um, and it was the big hair helmet, hair past the waist type of deal. But music was a little bit different back then. So, like each music ran its cycle, right? So punk had their 3 or 4 year cycle, and metal had their cycle, and we got signed right at right before Nirvana came out. So that's when they chopped up, all the hair metal guys. So I sort of basically turned my back on it. I was like, well, I'm not going to make it. Started my companies and was doing that for quite a bit. Except if there was like every once in a while, if there was a special occasion, I would write something for a movie or a TV show. But essentially, I was focusing on that. And then because of one of my companies, it's called it's called Go Go Tuners, and I make pedal tuners. But because of that, I was dealing with so many artists, and so that sort of kept me a little bit in the circle of things. And then it was really one day, maybe about 8 years ago, I went to see a friend play up in New York, and he goes to me, "Are you playing guitar. And he gave the bullshit answer. I go, yeah, I'm still playing. I'm still doing the thing. And he goes, Mike, you got, I always say, I'm not sure if it was the Jack Daniels or if it was 3 a.m. or we just never had any kind of deep conversation, but it's always caught me off guard. But that conversation was the catalyst. So he goes, you really got into the business because that's who you are. It's your soul. It's, that's who you are. And so I thought about it, but I was still thinking more like in a pragmatic way about, instead of these guys thinking I'm like an entrepreneur or, a guy in a lab coat, a widget guy. I wanted to know, I was like, it'd be really good if they knew that I was a musician and designed my stuff for a musician. And so sure enough, 4 months out, I knew my next interview was going to be 4 months. And usually I would just go as, I put in quotes, the CEO guy, I would have the artist, and no one knew I played guitar. Nobody. And so I knew my next interview was going to be, like I said, 4 months. So I practiced every night from midnight till 4 a.m. Because that was also a big thing for me. If I was going to do music or be seen as a musician, I didn't want to be like, it's kind of cute. Like they're letting the CEO play. It would have killed me. I wanted to be, to me, it was important to be credible. And if I couldn't do it at a high level and be credible, I was just not going to do it. So I practiced, like I said, almost for 4 hours a day for 4 months. And then I call it coming out of the musician closet. Was it was on Fox TV to 20 million people. That was my first thing. And and then from that I was doing interviews with my artists, and it would always be, I was scheduled out 30 days out, but I would learn this one song. And so again, my logic is, if I play one song for 30 days, I'll be pretty good at that one song. And then from that, I started getting invited by some of my, famous, friends. And here I am, I'm playing, theaters and arenas and come up and do the encore with them. Like, cool, it was great. And then from that, I said, well, why don't I make my own events and bring, I'll be the house band and bring my, famous friends to sit in with me. So I started doing that. And then the next phase, I made an artist roster record. And that's where In Theory was born on that. But it has, a lot of my artists, but I also, so In Theory had, I think, 2 songs on that. And that record charted on 4 simultaneous charts at the same time. So I think we're like on the alternative chart and the blues chart, because it's a very eclectic record. So 4 singles
Very
at the
much.
same time. And so from that, like I said, In Theory caught so much momentum that the singer, Tony Cavino and I decided, he said, let's keep rolling with In Theory. And that was close to 6 years ago, or around 6 years ago when I put that record out. And since then, we've put out a couple of records. We've had 2 top 10 singles. We've been touring the last several years, so that's turned into the evil machine that it is. It's just catching momentum, and it just keeps growing. That like we just did the thing with Eric Gales, was a really big thing for us, especially for me as a guitar player. I'm not sure if you're a guitar player, but you look like you could be a guitar player.
Keyboards. If you ever need a
Yeah.
keyboardist, remember
Oh,
this face. Remember me. If you
okay.
ever need a keyboardist.
Remember the Looneybin.
Yes, please.
And yeah, so like I said, so I got to play with Eric, and which was he was definitely one on my bucket list. But I met him through Victor Wooten. I'm not sure if you know who Victor is.
Hmm.
And originally, um, originally he was playing at Victor's camp up in Nashville. So I reached out to Victor and said, I want to go play with him because Victor's a family friend. I'm like, Victor, I want to play with him. And she goes, sure, no, no problem. But like we said before we started the interview, I also take care of my parents, so the scheduling just didn't work. And oh, there you go. Hey, there you go. So scheduling didn't work, and then if you want to call it by fate, by chance, or destiny, however you want to look at it, then Eric happened to be playing by my parents in Georgia 3 weeks later. So I just reached out to Eric. I said, Victor's been trying to connect us, and he says, come down to sound check. Let's see how we vibe. And and basically I think we vibed quite well. And he goes, in the nicest ways, well, fuck sound check. He goes, I have a studio. Let's go do something. So at first I was like, thought he was being polite. And I waited till the tour ended. I called him, first week of this, it was in December, and that was it. I had to put it together really quick. So he only had 2 dates that were available, and and I had put a different rhythm section together, and it wasn't the same. And also seeing how Eric was at his sound check, and he expects a lot as well. So and at the same time, I was working with Tommy Hendrickson on Retribution, and Tommy's from Vampires and from Alice Cooper, and so I needed the drummer, and he's like, well, let's call up Glenn. So I called up Glenn Sobel, and Glenn's like, when was it? It was like on a Tuesday night, and we were trying to get his engineer by 11 o'clock that night. I had Glenn's scheduled for that Thursday because I had to fly out to Eric's place by Friday morning. So then I got Glenn on drums, and then I got a different bass player. Then I got Jimbo Hart, who's been part of the 400 unit with Jason Isbell for 15 years, 20 years, something like that. And then on keys is this guy Clayton Ivey. I'm not sure if you know who Clayton is.
No, I do not.
Okay,
who's he with?
Okay, so there's a thing called the original, like the Swampers and the Fame Gang out of Muscle Shoals. I'm not sure if you Leonard Skinner sings about him. There's famous studio Muscle Shoals sound, but Clayton is one of those guys that is the original Fame Gang, and I think again, if you Wikipedia him, I think he has something that 400 million records sold.
The dream team is even deeper than I had imagined.
Oh yeah, and he's the beast on keys. He's just probably one of the best musicians I've ever played with in my life, for sure. Is at Clayton, and another guy was on. I don't think we ever released it, but Tony and I brought this other guy's named Spooner, and he's also the other keyboard half of the Muscle Shoals sound. And Spooner is the guy who gave Aretha Franklin, as she says, her mojo. Like she couldn't buy a hit essentially, and when Spooner got involved, it was her first hit. And he's on like I'd Rather Go Blind, Etta James, and but between both those guys, it's they're both Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Famers. And anyway, so that's part of the dream team. So like the best of the best, and but it was kind of cool. But their influences are slightly all different. But
you can hear that in the music too. I have written on by the way, friends and listeners and dear inmates, never let it be said that the very best things cannot happen to you involving a bottle of Jack Daniels at 3 a.m. It goes against counterintuitivity, but no, it's great. It's highly recommended as part of your mental health therapy. I wrote on the song Retribution. I love the fact that it says you don't need permission to follow your dreams. That was in the release that was sent to me.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love that quote. I wrote that it sounded like a little bit like what AC/DC might have sounded like if they had done a song with Axl, not so much in the vocal sound, so much as the overall feel. It felt like how do I want to word it? I don't want to say technical as in pretentious, but a busier, more technical AC/DC. I really liked it.
I like that. And that would make sense because working with Tommy. Do you know Tommy Hendrickson or?
Yes. Now is he one of the ones who Alice Cooper is taking with him on this little reunion thing he's got, or not?
No, he's post that, but he's been with Cooper for about 15 years.
Was he on Raise Your Fist and Yell?
If it's in the last 15 years, I would say yes, but he's written a lot of stuff for Alice, and he's produced a lot of stuff for Alice, and he's also a member of the Hollywood Vampires, and he produced the Vampires with Bob Ezrin. And but it's funny that you said AC/DC and all that. Tommy's also has a band called Crossbone Scully, and on that record, which he just released, That one's been produced by Mutt Lang.
Oh,
Yeah, so he works with Mutt for the last
okay.
right for the last 5 years, and it was a venture for honestly for myself as well. So usually I'm the sole producer, and on Retribution, Tommy and I co-produced. And so you definitely get the Mutt Lang, you get the AC/DC, you get a little bit of angst. Tommy's got a little bit of I wouldn't say a little. He's got some attitude, which is great. So if you took what I do, what he does, add a splash of Mutt Lang, and like you said, the vocal style, it's sort of what you described.
You've got something in Retribution that I've never heard. I mean, I'm thinking of simple bands like punk rockers. I'm thinking about really busy bands like Dream Theater. I have never, on any end of the spectrum, seen anybody do a solo the way that you guys did on Retribution. It sounds like it's a build up for another part with the drum stabs,
Hmm.
and then it goes back into the other part. That is the solo. Who thought of that? Because I loved it. It totally has, as far as I know, correct me, listeners, and they will. If I'm wrong, I've never heard anyone do that.
Well, I appreciate that. That was me. That was on the demo, and we never changed it. I mean, that's the solo I played on the original demo when I was just working out the song, and I didn't. I would say I didn't change. I only changed the first 4 bars. That was it. But
The time, what's going on behind it really accents it because it sounds like it's building towards another part of the solo. It makes it really stand out because it doesn't go where you think it's going to go. It was my favorite thing that I found because it comes out of nowhere.
right, right, yeah, and it's got this like again. I think like I said, that part was written by me. Dun, 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 that whole thing. But
Yeah,
the sounds underneath it, there's like the swish and backward drums, and there's some other ear candy going on, and that's all like Tommy doing his ear candy stuff, and also like the timing is really weird on that. If you
yes.
getting out of that, I think everything's it's in four, it's a 4 count, except getting out is actually almost a 3.5 count to the next part. Is and that was it was interesting because that's how like I said, I wrote it that way and we kept it that way.
And those
Um,
those are those nuggets that people hear and don't think they hear. Like people will hear a song such as Master of Puppets, and they won't notice, you know, that some of the weird things that break in that song are not standard timing. And those are the little nuggets that separate bands that sound alike from bands copying. That gives them their own sound. It really makes them stand out.
Thank you. Like I said,
The Led Zeppelin cover. It's been a yeah. Take two. I've been loving you. I wrote that the chorus on that, and there are a few surprises after the first chorus. The way that the whole thing is put together, that is almost like the solo we were talking about. It's not the way you look for it to come back in. Was that your arrangement too?
yeah, yeah, that's my fault.
I love it. I love it. Were you ever a drummer?
If
A bit of a
I was,
delay. There we go. It'll fix, friends. Bit of a delay. Don't tune out. Don't tune out. It's part of your therapy. There we
yeah. So I think maybe in my other life I was a drummer. Maybe. Um,
go.
it's just that's like what I hear instinctively. And I remember when I was doing that song, and same thing you were talking about the solos coming in different spots and stuff. When I was doing with Eric, because Eric and I were 5 feet away from each other. I'm one of those guys, by the way. I hate mailing tracks. I know the technology is so good. I like to be in the same room. I want a reaction, because there's something about
Yes.
when like there's things that you don't even know. Like someone's reacting, and you look up, you see them just shaking their head. It makes you play a little bit different, and then you're actually feeding off each other. And I think that's missed when you just send a track up. Then it's just up for interpretation. And I just want I always try to feel like a passion or an excitement. I'm trying to always capture that. But but anyway, getting back to the solo, what I was doing, Eric's like, man, no, man, it's not going to work. It doesn't work that way. I'm like, no, no, it'll work that way. No, he goes, no, Mike, it doesn't work that way. I go, no, it'll work, and it worked. And the
It,
same thing like with the intro. It was really funny. So I had to, I think like the first 26 seconds, whatever it is, 28 seconds. It's just him and I playing in unison. It's only when it's me when I'm not totally locked in, then you can hear the two guitars. Um, but the funny thing with that, he was also like, I don't get it, but all right, it's your thing, go do it. And so we did the intro, and I started editing, and he was going out to the car, loading his stuff, and then he heard my edits, and he's like, "Okay, got it. I know what you're trying." And he was like, "That sounds great." And and I call, like, he always wears the matching jumpsuit. He's color coordinated, so he's got the sneakers that matches. I call it the pajamas, but it's a jumpsuit. And he's got the gold thing on him. And, so what blew my mind is, so I did the edits and I did the whole intro. He comes back in, and you have to remember he's a strung lefty. So he goes, "All right, Mike, give me your guitar." Now I'm a righty. He just took my guitar and turned it upside down and played the whole thing with me. Just, I
wow.
thought, oh my God, this guy's a freak. Like, in the best way possible. Like, wow.
You need to get tooting your own horn. You should be doing, because not only did you get these people together, they trusted you on this thing that at first they didn't trust you on. That's even more impressive, because I know I've gotten the look in bands before when I'm so excited about something and they're looking at me like, that's not going to happen. You got them
Right.
to believe in it. You got them to believe. That's the hardest part, not to play but to believe.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a balance, because it's like, on one hand, they're your idols, and so I look up to all these people, but on the other hand, I'm the producer as well, so you have to lead. So it's a balance of, you're collaborating with these people because they are these amazing guys. So you have to let them do what they do, but you also have to stick with your vision. It's kind of interesting balance I've been trying to do.
World on Fire. I said it has a cool vocal effect. It's strong social commentary, and musically, it reminds me of some of the Aussie stomp songs, like oh, I don't know, maybe like Hellraiser or something. It's got that stomp to it, and that one really jumped out because I thought that the I like how it's produced. There isn't anything necessarily in the background, if that makes any sense. You can hear all the parts in ways that you can't with other songs.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. That one was. Oh yeah. Now I remember. Okay, so that one was like, again. I feel like a lot of accidents. So like, I always have a need to be creative, right? So um, it's like, it's weird. It's like, I almost, if I don't get to be creative and write, it's almost like I get depressed. I really, there's something about it that feeds the soul, feeds, was it the endorphins, of feel, the feel good things in my mind. And so I live in a place called Muscle Shoals, and I work out a place East Avalon Studios. But so I was like, I got to record something. I was going to do a cover. Eventually, I'll do a cover with that person. We'll announce that. It'll be another collaboration down the road. But I was going to do one of his songs, and I was arranging for the Alabama Orchestra, and I had this arrangement in my head. It was going to be a cover, and the engineer, he's always encouraging me to say, do your thing, Mike. Um, he always has a nice way of gently veering me away from that. And while he was getting sounds, I did the riff. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da, and he's like, Mike, great riff. And then sure enough, I already know what that's going to mean. So no cover song. We started working on that, and that was it.
I
And
got
then,
you to trust them that time.
yeah, well, him and I have been working together almost 8 years now, and we spend a lot of, when I'm in the studio, we go deep. We're doing like 16, 18-hour days together. So that's my other home. So, when you're in a room with somebody for such a long period of time, over a long period of time, yeah, you definitely get to trust them. And and he gets my vision, and we have an unspoken language or spoken language, because there's many times I'm like, you know, this sounds like this could be a chorus, or I go, oh, this could be a sample for something on, and he just saves it. Whatever certain things I say, he saves it, and then I'll work on some song, and he's like, remember that thing that you said over here? He goes, let's hear it over here, So he already knows that, like, it's the same thing goes vice versa. If I hear an idea, he's saving them for him.
The computer's telling me we have 8 minutes left, so I'm going to drop it to two questions. Next to the last one, the river. I looked that up, and it reminded me of like a Cinderella twang with keyboards. But then when you think you know what's coming, it's like McTwisty time. The chorus comes in and almost sounds like it's borrowing from Motown. And you were talking about the number of
Mhm.
of different influences. That one is one that I think defines what you were talking about there very well.
Oh yeah, and that's Mr. Clayton Ivey on keys, and you feel the Muscle Shoals on that one. Like, that it gives it that. Yeah, it's almost like an R&B feel, but not. But you feel it,
Yes.
And I think on that track too, the drummer. I don't think we ever mentioned him too often, but great drummer. His name is Andy Sinise, and he's another guy. Wikipedia him is pretty insane, but he currently plays, I think, with Missing Persons. He plays with Ed Volting's Frankie Valli.
Missing
He
person.
plays with Sebastian Bach. Excuse me. Yeah, he
Missing
plays it.
person. I
Yeah.
haven't thought of no. I was a really big fan back in the day. That's wild. And
So yeah, so
Sebastian
think about
Bach. So yeah,
Sebastian. Yeah,
there's that diversity. If you go from missing persons to
right.
Sebastian Bach,
Well,
like
yeah, to play with being Terry Bozzio's
the
sub. I mean,
Zappa
that's a pretty
offspring.
big deal, right? And so yeah, he's the drummer on that, and the bass player on that. I have to give him a shout out. Is Colin Lott, and he was the assistant engineer, and I was working on the demos. I said, no, that one needs bass. And he goes, well, I played a little bass. Well, it turns out he plays a whole lot of bass. So, I had him do bass on that track. And I didn't know he was a bass player. And he plays, has the John Paul Jones thing going, so, um, yeah, and the river, by the way, that's the very first, of the, first to say, very first In Theory song. So that's what we think of our first song is the river.
That's a great way to come out of the gate. Came out like a flood. Loved it. Um, Again, for those of you just tuning in, NEOPA Radio, we are live. Got time for one more question with Mike Mostert from In Theory. It was funny. I said I was doing an interview with In Theory, and everyone's like, "Well, you are In Theory." That's great. Is that how you thought
I
of the
think you're
name?
cutting out right now.
All right.
I,
Famous.
I, I didn't hear one thing. You said you froze up for a sec.
The name In Theory. It wasn't necessarily the last question, but I did think of it. I was told, I said I was interviewing In Theory, and people were like, is that a statement or a question? In theory.
Right. Well, that's pretty much how I came up yeah. How we came up with the name is at rehearsal should work, or in theory this should work, and we just thought it was funny, so we said, well, let's call the band In Theory.
Nice. All right, my famous last question. You've listened to me for all this time asking questions. Is there anything that you'd like to say to everyone that you've never been asked, or something maybe that you're surprised you've never been asked? Anything in the world? I always close with that question.
Hmm.
I've gotten some crazy replies.
Hmm. No, what haven't I been asked?
Or anything of particular interest that you think that maybe was interesting and no one's ever thought to, really notice it.
Ooh, that's a good question. No, because everybody always covers it somehow. Somehow, I'm trying to think. No, because I think I always pique people's interest because they're always trying to figure out how I went from these worlds. From being musician to entrepreneur to
Yeah.
back to musician. Um, I don't know. I think I would get more, like no one's really asked me like on a serious note, which obviously this will be like a whole other show. I think what it takes to to achieve your dreams, and your passions. And I would, it's something I'd love to like really dig into, the dedication and commitment it takes to follow your dreams and passions, without being too cliched about it. Because I know what it's like to start from nothing and and achieve on many different avenues, whether it was music or business or in manufacturing, creating. Yeah, no
Well,
one's really asked like,
the computer's
what
probably
is the
going to
journey
cut
to
us.
do that?
The computer's probably going to cut us off, but I do want to go ahead and elaborate on that until it does. Once again, this show's dedicated to Christina Lamont Lijoi. I will miss you so much, my friend. And I'm asking you guys to pray for Mike Mostert's family as well. But I'm going to go ahead and let him use the rest of this Zoom call as it's going to cut off on us. But that's fine. What is the most important thing a person can do to follow? Because I've been through that myself, where you get to a plateau and then it's flooded. What are some of your tricks?
Well, I think for me, it's a philosophy of, just always move forward. Like, because there's some days, you only move a quarter inch, and there's days that you'll move miles, and but treat those days the same, And I think a lot of people give up and they get frustrated on the days that they're only going a quarter inch, And it's easy to wake up and like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this, um, and I think that's a lot of reasons why people don't succeed. They get hard on themselves because it is hard. It's not an easy journey. Because what they say, right? Anything worthwhile is not an easy path. Um, so that is my philosophy on things. And again, if you're happy, this like I said, going quarter inch, uh, and I think if you do that consistently, you'll look back 5 months later, a year later, 5 years later, X amount of time, and then you'll see you actually moved hundreds of miles.
Oh,
And
that is that is perfect. It's telling me I got 30 seconds and it's gonna kill the Zoom call. Thank you for checking into the Looney Bin. Once again, friends, make sure you pray for his family and pray for the memory of Christina Lamont Lijoi. Good night, friends. God bless. Thank you for listening to the Looney Bin in theory style.